So good evening, everybody. So my name is Luciana Ledesma. I'm just going to give a brief background about myself and what I do, so you have an idea of who I am. So I'm a manager partner of 10XU Rocker. We're a company builder that is based in Miami, but we also have offices in London and people working around the world. Like me, I have a base in Miami, but I spend quite some time traveling. And I used to live in Munich, so I like to come back here and spend maybe 1 week, a month, or something like this. And it's very nice to reconnect with you. And what I'm going to be talking about today is really about how to create an exponential business around this technology. And I'm going to share with you some examples of how to do that. But before that, what I would like to do is to introduce a perspective on, let's say, how the world is right now and how that has some implications in the business ground. One of the things maybe I would like to mention also on the things that we do at Rocker, so to give a bit more context, is like we invest across the world, right? We have a $155 million fund. So we see a lot of things, and we do find some patterns in the world and the way that business is done. And I'm going to recommend some approaches for building a company. Maybe you are familiar with some of them. I would love to hear from you whether you know them or not, if you have used them. What's your feedback on those? And also I would like to tell you about the process that we use and what are the advantages of that. And of course, then I'm going to deep dive into 3 examples that I was close to them, where they actually implement this technology from speech to text. And I'm going to talk about other examples that may be useful or applications that maybe inspire you or maybe can also lead some discussions here in the group if you are actually working in any of those. The examples are wrap-up. Does anyone know wrap-up? SpeechMed. Wrap-up is in Dubai. I used to live there 5 months ago. I left Dubai. I was incubated in M5. SpeechMed is based in Florida. Raw Shorts is also from Florida. And then I'm going to bring an example from SBD, but it's more on, let's say, audition recognition. It's not really a speech. And then some takeaways and some opportunities for collaboration for all of us. But I really would like this talk to be interactive, and so I'm going to ask you to really close your eyes for 30 seconds and imagine the world in 2030 and an answer to these questions. Doesn't need to be all of them, but have a look at this and try to find answers, like take a deep breath. So I will count to 5, and then you'll just close your eyes. And then the idea is that you share with your person next to you what are the answers. Is that okay? Make sense? Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so 30 seconds to share with your partners. How about, what does it mean, speech to text in 2030? Okay. Okay, so I see there is a lot of energy in the room. That is great. We're going to need it. There are people that want to continue talking. That's also good. So who would like to share some interesting insight that was shared by the partner next to you? Anyone? Something you say, wow, I haven't thought about that. Or, oh, I had the same thought, maybe. Anyone? Yeah.
So we were looking what happens in 2030, but I showed them that, like how I communicate now with my friends, and it's just all the voice messages. So already it's like we use just speech to talk to the people. I mean, in 10 years, it won't be that rare that people, already it's not that rare that people are talking or using just speech to talk to people. Maybe we forgot how to write it. And then we were also discussing like all this administration stuff, and you now can basically, if you can translate the speech into text, then you would talk just to chatbots to go through the queries. Maybe now it's just a simple task that they focus on the simple task with the chatbot, but maybe even in the future they go like with the legal problems, and they will be able to solve them. So that was our discussion.
Pose a question and get the answer. Yes.
So we might get a plugin in your messengers, like when you browse through, you can see the text of your voice message. So now we have to listen to this, but you might get the algorithm much developed. So you can browse through and you can see the text, what's happening, so that you don't need to hear anything. Just use the same thing. You can see how it's written. Yeah, how it's written.
Anyone else would like to share some insights? Okay, maybe we can come back to this. Okay, so I think we really live in a world that is full of uncertainty, and we don't know how it's going to look like, but there are some hints out there pointing in some direction. And it's good to do this exercise and repeat it quite often. It's actually like a moving target, I would claim. And in this uncertainty, there are a lot of things that, seem quite dark. But in reality, what is happening is that the lifespan is increasing, information is becoming more available, and even we're becoming more conscious, even about the impact that we have on other people. And technology is allowing us to maybe work in a decentralized way, very efficiently. And at the same time, what is happening is that the pace at which things are changing is so fast that doing this exercise quite often is much needed. And here is a reflection on how is it changing. Before, to get to 1 billion valuation, like in 1998, it was taking 8 years, right? So Google in 1990, then 8 years to get to the 1 billion valuation. When you have, in 2012, it just took 2 years, right? So I think these are putting into perspective of this change and how rapidly things are moving. And we live in a hyper-connected world, right? And when I mean this, I could also share these numbers. The time that took to reach to 50 million users for the phone was 75 years, right? Facebook, 1 year. Angry Birds, 35 days. That is incredible. Pokemon Go, 19 days. So we all see that way of disruption that is coming, right? We see it coming. But what to do, really? How to adapt? How to really transform? And for example, if you're Audi, you know it's coming to your cash cow. What do? How do you put wings on it? Or how do you actually transform it into a unicorn? So these are all very valid questions. And for having an answer, we need to understand the business playground, right? What is happening is that before we had a few actors deciding and actually competing for the market, right? Now we have actually thousands, billions of people actually involved. So it's way more participatory and collaborative. And at the same time, another thing is that before what was equaling success was to have a certain share over the market. But that's not anymore. It's actually the ability to innovate and reinvent yourself and adapt to a new emerging market and even be the creator of that new market will really bring you success. And at the same time, it's this adaptability, right? So these are our, let's say, the elements that I think are so important here. Are any of you familiar with Singularity University? Okay, so this is actually from Singularity University Framework, which is kind of our sister company from Rocker. They use a very similar methodology, but they say, well, the world is moving into 6D, so digitized, right? And that also allow to demonetize. We can actually copy things very fast and almost for free. We can generate a lot of disruptiveness, like with technology we have that we have a better performance very rapidly increasing. We have dematerialized, there are hardware that become unnecessary, redundant. Software can do it, right? Or even people, like this is one of the topics that, you know, is now in our society. What is gonna happen? Like, are people gonna be displaced or not? And democratized. But of course, not everything is so, the playground is not so level, and one of the places where I think we still need to see a lot is in data, right? Data is very expensive when you're building a company, but there are many interesting things happening there, like new creative ways of using open data, at the same time, new sensors to actually gather data. And I would say AdMobilize, that's an example that I put there. It's a company that we built where, again, it's a creative way of gathering data. So it's like advertisement, a screen that flips the advertisement and has a video that just captures the reaction of the people that are watching at that and then analyze the emotions, right, and generates the data. So this is, I would say, one of the topics, but I keep hope because I do see all the time new creative solutions to surpass some of the challenges in this area. Oh, okay. I think, how do I do this? I wanted to play a game, but apparently, wait a minute. Let's see if we can play. Okay. So, I would like to play a very short game and very simple game so that I can make a point for the next 5 minutes. Are you in? Okay. So the game consists in you actually telling the color of the word that you will see on the screen. But you have to say it in loud voice, very loud voice. So I'm going to be fast, and you will have to be fast. Is that okay? Okay. So, come on, louder, faster. What happened there? So, I think the point I wanted to make here is that frameworks are important. And you, more than anyone, are working on this field, know it, right? And it's really, there was a framework that prompted us a reaction, right? So what I'm going to do now in the next 5 minutes is present you with some frameworks which I think could be useful for you to thrive in this era. How many of you know this one? Okay, how many of you use this one? Okay, so design thinking. my advice here would be whatever you actually design, whatever you bring to the market, particularly if you're trying to build a company that is profitable, make sure you actually take into consideration the user at the center, right? And this is a process of doing it, empathizing, really understanding what are the pain points of the person that you're actually engaging with. Who's the client, right? What are the challenges? And that's one of the first questions that you should be answering, right? And then only then you can then move into the definition of a solution. We are very tempted to say, oh, I have a great idea, this is it, but we don't know where to apply it. It doesn't mean that you can't be, let's say, at the solution space and then find a problem, but as long as then when you actually say, like, yeah, I have this great, cool thing, but I don't know where to apply it, you go and try to apply it, you deep dive into the needs of the user. And then you move into ideation, prototyping, you know, you need to get real, you need to get out there to test out, to get feedback, to understand what people think. And to test your hypothesis. So what I would like you to do is very briefly, in 30 seconds, to actually talk between yourself and answer this. When was the last time, tell your partner, when was the last time you have used a speech-to-text application, and how was your experience? And what task were you doing when you wish you had speech-to-text application? So. Okay. Okay. So, you already know what I'm gonna ask, right? Is there anyone that would like to share? Okay.
So if your computer was actually listening, you wouldn't need this little presenter. And the same thing happened to me yesterday.
Oh, like, I know what you mean.
What task we're doing? I mean, I would want it to automatically take my notes, whatever in the university, if something is going on, it takes the note automatically, whatever the professor
figure out
is.
what is important.
Yeah, and figure out what's important. Because a lot of time I take notes and we just ignore it. We don't know where to go.
I have something for you later then. Someone else? Okay, so just keep in mind, design thinking is one of the key frameworks that I do recommend for you to take into account when you actually are trying to build a company. Another one would be customer development. How many of you are familiar with this one? Okay. Okay, so these frameworks come from Singularity University, from a person that was a serial entrepreneur. Now he's an investor. He also used to teach at Berkeley. And what he said is like, what a company needs is actually a repeatable, scalable business. This means that it needs to go out there and you need to make a sale and then make another sale and another sale. And in that sense, what he realized is that very few startups were actually, or let's say that the ones that were successful were the ones that were really getting out there, and very few were actually doing this systematically. So what he said is like he tried to put into the framework what would be a methodology to build a company. He said, look, what you need to do is you have a certain hypothesis that you will create value by doing X, Y, Z. You don't know till you get the feedback from the customer. So get out of the building, ask, do the prototype test, see what people feel like, and then learn and incorporate that into your process, right? And I think this one, as a framework, is very, very important. One of the things that I face a lot of times with entrepreneurs is this, let's say, they have to shift between building whatever they are building and getting in the business development. So I don't know, are any of you entrepreneurs? Okay, so you know what I'm talking about. And juggling between the two things is not easy. So keeping this in mind is crucial, right? Like you have to get out there. It's very easy to get, let's say, sucked by the everyday product building or things like that. And at the end of the day, what you really need is people to pay for what you build. And people will not pay till you learn what they want to actually get to pay for, right? So, so that's my second framework that I strongly recommend. And does anyone know this book? Anyone read it? Okay, so Exponential Organizations. Basically, this book was developed by analyzing what do the companies that are scaling very fast have in common nowadays. So they analyze a bunch of them, and they say, well, you know, they do share some attributes. First of all, they all apply exponential technologies. What are exponential technologies? Exponential technologies are technologies that in a matter of months are actually having the costs decreased and at the same time increasing the performance. The first person to know this and actually generated like, it's called as the Moore law, is Moore. He said like in computer power, what is happening is there is like this decrease in cost and increase in performance. So that is an exponential technology. But what they realize in Singularity University also is actually working with this perspective is like it's not only applying to computing, it also applies to sensors, it applies to nanotechnology, it applies to renewables. So the scale of this exponential change is much broader than we're thinking. And it's actually the interplay of the different technologies what is really making this huge transformation that we're seeing kind of ubiquitous everywhere. And so one of the things they do have in common is that they do have technology at its core. That's why one of the things I do recommend is that you do take a tech approach. This is one of the first things if you're building one company today. But that's not all. So they said these are the attributes that they have in common. Not that all of them have all these attributes, but at least they have 4 or 5. And then they actually grow very fast. And what are those attributes? So some are external attributes and some are internal attributes. And all attributes, what are doing is actually there is an abundance that is generated through technology, right? That you have to unlock it somehow with some of this. So for example, you can transform it in a stuff on demand, or you can build a community, for example, around Reddit, or it could be a GitHub, which are examples of companies that went through that algorithm. So you unlock that abundance, and then you, on the internal side, you need to learn how to manage that abundance. You need to have a system, right? You need to do it in a methodic way. So, and at the same time, what they do share is like an MTP. An MTP is a massive transformative purpose. This is when, before a company used to have a vision and say like, oh, I want to be the, I don't know, first utility in the world. Now they are saying, the ones that are actually scaling very fast, what is the impact that they want to bring to the world? What is the change that they want to generate? So this is actually one of the in my view, most powerful frameworks that are out there. It has been built in 2013, and what I like about it is that it comes from reality, right? Same like Steve Blank looking at, okay, the ones that are really successful are the ones that are able to make sales after sale after sale. So when you're actually trying to find and create a business, it's about finding this sweet spot, right? Between unmet or underserved needs with these exponential technologies and new business models. Now, one thing to keep in mind is like, okay, the fact that all three are, let's say, you find something that it's between the three doesn't mean that it's a good idea, right? You have to see if it's big, if it's small, if it's something that will continue to be in the future, because we know there is a lot of change. There are things that might become obsolete. So I'm working with a company right now in Brazil, and they're gonna do an ICO. One of the things is that, you know, they have the POS for the payments, and we know it's gonna be obsolete. What's the point of having the POS, right? When you could do it with a QR code, when you could do it with a mobile. So from some perspective, it might be, you know, that is somehow there in that sweet spot, but that sweet spot is actually for now, and it will not last for long. So here, there are some examples of business models, new business models. I'm not gonna go into details because I want to get to the examples about speech to text, but crowdsourcing, low cost, as a service, and these sort of things. In terms of process, I recommend also sprints, and this is something, I don't know how many of you are familiar with Google Sprints? Okay. So the difference, so Google Sprint is also an articulated process of 1 week where you actually build a prototype, right? You have, and you maybe have a solution before, but then you unpack that solution and you test some of the hypotheses. In this case, it's a larger process. It's not a week, it's 8 to 9 weeks. And what you actually do is like, you take a broader perspective on building the company, right? And why it's important? Because, you know, you get momentum. It's like a Scrum, it's like a Google Sprint. The main difference here is that it has some strategic components. I think the Google Sprint is very focused to one part of the business and not the whole picture. Like, for example, what are the trends out there? What are the exponential technologies out there? So, okay, so we have arrived to the first example, and this is WrapUp. As I mentioned before, this is a company established in 2015 in Dubai. And the problem, as you well mentioned, is that taking notes is not easy. You know, there are a lot of people that handwriting is terrible, and they just like, you know, or if you get too focused and you shift away your attention from the main point of the conversation. So the solution of this application is an easy-to-use way of generating minutes of meetings. So it transcribes real time, and apart from that, they summarize. So they make the highlights. And the company has gone very successful and has received 100K seed funding, and it's beyond its MTP right now, so they are actually creating playable summary of the discussions. You can create tags, you can search around, you can integrate it also on your phone calls, for example. You can integrate it in your video conference. So it's really going very well, and it's also now being considered to be applied on the call centers, right? And call centers, I don't know if maybe you use one of these examples, like when was the last time that you actually came across a speech to text? One of the early, let's say, or versions of these technologies, the automated menu when you call to a call center, right? And the idea here is really to move away from that sometimes is very annoying to the customer, to really bring value. How? Creating like an analysis around the text and the conversation. There is a lot of conversational data. So in a sense, a call center call is nothing else than just a short meeting between customer and customer service, right? So that's why it's being applied there. All labs, I just found this today. Well, in fact, someone sent it to me. It's the device that you can, it moves around when people talk, right? So it also has this ability to make all these calls way more interactive. So I just wanted to put it out there. I thought it was cool. The second example, I don't know, anyone has some questions about wrap up? I can come back to it later on, but maybe you have some questions. Okay. Second example, SpeechMed. The problem that a lot of people face when going into the healthcare system is that they don't understand necessarily the instructions that are given. And one of the cases why this happens is language barrier. Here in Germany, actually, you do have a lot of people from abroad that come and do not speak German, right? And they do have to use the system. So this is a real problem. And in many places, in the US, this is a company from the US, there are a lot of people that come from abroad to get treated. And the idea is very simple. You know, you give a tablet, and let's say the doctor is talking, and it's just translating directly into the language of the person, right? At the same time, elderly people sometimes find it hard, right? So it has grown in different functionalities, so it can repeat the message to them, for example, because sometimes they have problem with the eyesight, or just they can note and then they can send it to the nurse, so the nurse actually can act on that things that receive, or the caregiver, whomever is taking care of the person. And this is also, you know, it has evolved very nicely, I would say, because now it's being applied at different levels, patient, family members, different areas, doctors, nurses, hospitals are all. So maybe I'm gonna play this. It's gonna be very short, but I think you'll get a better idea.
Imagine that your life depended on taking 5 pills properly. Now imagine how scary it would be if you were one of 90 million people unable to understand the instructions. How can patients follow instructions they don't understand? 1 in 5 Americans speak a language other than English. SpeechMed, a multilingual voice platform, allows patients to hear the medical information in a language that they understand, regardless of a person's age or language preference. We are SpeechMed.
Okay, so. Where did I put the clicker? Oh. Oh, I need your innovation. Okay, I don't know. It's not working. Doesn't matter. So I just, yeah. Where are they? It's Spanish and English. Yeah. Yeah. You're planning to bring it to Germany? And this is, of course, an example that could maybe help such a technology, right? Like, and such a thing, like an iPad, I give it, someone arrives, you could say, okay, you know, at some point, people will learn German, but till that, you get to that point, you actually need to communicate, right? I don't know, to do your paperwork and signing. So just wanted to bring that as an example of an area which I think is yet to be developed. Coming back now to health, also is, you know, like doctors have a reputation for having a horrible handwriting. Horrible handwriting. I don't know, like, if it's the same in Germany. I say this because my mom and my sister are doctors, and I can actually say that myth, at least in my family, does apply very well. And so the idea here is, and this is not a company I've been so much involved, but I actually wanted to see what was out there. So I found this one, that in health, what they are doing is also giving the possibility to doctors to actually make all the reports directly on a device. And of course, by that, they can manage better the workflow. And you know, it's so good because then they can share the information, and all this generates immense value. And it generates immense value, and that made me think also in, let's say, emergency cases particularly, right? Like an emergency case, like you're not gonna start to say, oh, I'm gonna take some notes so I can give it to them, so. And I thought in emergency, one example that could be interesting, or something, like application that could be interesting, is for team coordination of firefighters, right? And here I would say maybe is the interplay and combination of that. Because let's say this person here needs actually to communicate not only to one, but maybe to many, right? So having the possibility of people of having a wearable somewhere where they can actually see whatever is being said on the other side could be important, or beeping or something. But it's the interplay, and it's how we create different things what really creates this value, right? This example, so one company in Florida, I know it quite well, so because we've been working together in developing this. So what they do, you know, to create actually explanatory video is not so easy. It takes time. Either you're an expert or you have to hire someone, and it's expensive. So the value proposition here is like, you know, I make explanatory video easy for anyone. And now it's in a stage that is experimenting with very interesting things. And one is that, you know, you actually write the script, or you dictate the script, and it gives you back the images, and it puts them. And you can select, oh no, give me another one. I don't like it. It doesn't represent what I wrote. So I just think it's a very interesting example, and also we're looking at incorporating oral comments to it. And yes, by looking at this, I actually found some interesting examples in the space where speech-to-text is being interestingly used. Does anyone know this one or use this one? Video editing. So, you know, video editing again is just like, it takes time, you need to listen, but if you actually have the text, then it's much easier. You can actually highlight the areas where you really want to fit into the final video, and you can have at least a very workable version, and then you can fine-tune. Another example in this area is video search, right? If you are actually BBC and generate like thousands and tons of videos, how do you actually manage all that, right? And one way is to have everything transcribed and then pull that and make it searchable. And that's what they are doing it. Before, they were actually, you know, tagging it and putting it like into somewhere. So it was, but the tag and the way that that was described was very dependent on a person. So by this way, you have all the texts, and you can actually, you know, make search every time, and they don't need to be, let's say, further classified. So everything is exposed to search. Another one, which I think is interesting, and maybe you want to bring it to the TU München or LMU. How many are related to LMU? How many are related to TU München? Okay. Okay, interesting. So labs, so basically, you know, like you remove that friction that the person working in the lab would have with a device, and that creates a lot of value because, you know, you make sure that the sample that they're working on is not, let's say, exposed, and at the same time what you get is like further safety, right? Okay. So this example for dyslexia, for disabilities, I think is also a very interesting one. You know, it could make a lot of difference to a person with dyslexia. I don't know how many are you familiar with this disease, but it could cause a lot of anxiety because actually, you know, this person actually may have a lot of intellectual potential, but actually not being able to write. It can be it could make you very anxious, right? And so bringing such a solution in this space could really change the world for those people. And many people are actually, you know, looking at these solutions, right? And they know the technology is there, but somehow it's not widely reaching them. This is another example for disability. This is a guy in India that he decided, you know, to bring speech to braille. So, in agriculture, we have more than 800 million people still illiterate in the world, right? So this means that even accessing and searching on the web and all this, it's almost impossible for them. So bringing this to them is something that could make an impact. You know, they could provide feedback on, I don't know, some of the things that they work on and on the field activities. Of course, you could ask, like, okay, is that a case that will survive, you know, like when a lot of people are going to be displaced, like from those jobs? Yeah, but the people will still be in need because they will be literate. Maybe that's not an opportunity, let's say, as a business that will last forever, but it's an opportunity for you to change the world. So it's really depend also on what are your motivations, right? But these are also things that you should be considering if you are planning to have a business. So I wanted to also give a broader look at acoustic signal analysis. So behavioral signals, I don't know if anyone knows this company, but basically what they do is also they analyze in detail your tone and some other things, biometric data that allows them to infer whether you are actually angry, you are happy, you are engaged. So these are also, so it's like putting life to the text that is transcribed. And biometric sounds, this is for voice recognition. You know, we have face recognition that some companies are using even for payments. It's now like being widely spread. It could be also through voice. The thing is, like, there have been cases of hacking using high frequency that we cannot actually hear, but you know, it's capturing the computer, so you can send commands. And then there was one case of a BBC reporter that said, like, okay, I have a twin brother. I'm gonna pretend that I'm him, and I'm gonna enter into his bank account through the call center, and he did. So the voice recognition thing did not work. And the thing is, like, it's an interesting case because there were repeated things, and they were not even able to pick up on this, right? That they were being hacked once and again and again and again, like nobody was actually detecting it. This case is something I worked on last year with people from Stanley Black & Decker. 99% or more than 99% of alarms are false alarms. So detecting what actually that noise is and the environment sounds and analyzing that is crucial. And we did in 10 weeks in that process a very interesting prototype where the algorithm could detect whether that was like a broken window or it was a machine or it was a fax machine. I know it sounds weird, but still fax machine are one of the causes that generates a lot of alarms to go, and and that is very, very costly. Okay, so we are wrapping up now. So I just wanted to ask yourself this question: what would you do if you could only succeed? So maybe take 30 seconds and share it with your partner. Okay, so we are really, okay, wrapping up. So anyone that would like to share? Okay. Okay. Have you chosen already? No, I meant the person. Okay. Okay. Anyone else? Okay, you will build utopia. Okay, that's nice. Okay, so I'm gonna just finish the talk with a few thoughts. One is this one of Alvin Toffler. I really like this thing. I really think that it represents of what do we need to have. I actually would claim that one of the biggest, let's say, strength for thriving in this world is this ability to shift between frames, right? To learn and unlearn, to shift between, say, technical and business and moving there. And so I think this somehow represents that, so I wanted to bring it into the picture. And if you're having something there that you have sitting, technically you say like, oh, it's wonderful, but I don't know, there is no market. Just, it doesn't mean that you cannot create value with it. You need to find a problem, a challenge, and then start from there. So takeaways: find a challenge, put text into context. When I mean this, I put into the context of the user and into the context of how the world is evolving, how the industry is evolving, what are your competitors, what are the technologies you could bring to generate this value that is generated by bringing together different exponential technologies. And yeah, I would say also like go out there and see what frameworks you can find that would be useful, because a lot of people are generating a lot of experience, and there are ways, like methodologies of actually developing a business. So this is a bit of the people I work with. And just the last slide was more on opportunities. As I mentioned at the beginning, I'm going to be delivering some courses online on Crypto Academy. That is the soft launch in May. I'm going to have some coupons. If you are interested, just reach out to me. I'm happy to share those. We're also doing ICOs, so if you're or applying blockchain altogether, but if you're thinking about that, also I could guide you. Or if you are interested in getting involved on some of the activities that I'm doing, like for example, creating businesses, or maybe you want to know more about blockchain and be part of a project, just reach out to me. Okay, so that's all I have to say for now. Thank you so much. Oh, maybe last thing I want to mention is like, I know this was less technically focused, and that was entirely my fault. I actually asked Sergi. He said, well, you know, it's going to be very technical. I said, well, maybe it's about balancing that, and that's actually what I intended to do here today. Thank you.
Are there any questions in the audience? Not even a single one?
Question, comments? Did you actually, you know, find it useful? How is it for, yeah?
I will give a microphone.
Do you have questions?
I was working for an Indian company like 11 years ago. It was like overseas company which transcribes the surgeons when they are doing the surgery. They say it, and there would be a person in India who takes that audio and try to write it as a